On today's episode of The Journey, I get to catch back up with one of the guys that I've told you before who has been a mentor for me, for our group, for several guys in our group. Just a wealth of knowledge, and I was so honored that he was able to come up and spend a couple days with us and our group hunting. And I mean, I can't wait to recap some of this stuff and just talk about the hounds and the hunting and how that dives into the police side of things. And I think it'll help all of us that's running dogs, whatever it may be, chasing men or chasing game. But I'm back here with Jeff Shetler. And Jeff, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know that you were right in the middle of an 8-week course, and I really, really appreciate it. So how are things down in Modesto?
Actually, really great. We're just wishing we were back up in the mountains in Virginia with you guys.
Yeah, well, a little difference in terrain, huh?
Mm-hmm. Well, we learned that really quick. And here in the low country, if we talk about a hill or a mountain, it's maybe 10 feet. And then when we get up into your country, it's a little bit different. So that took some getting back used to. I mean, it's being here in Edisto in South Carolina for so long. I mean, I've taken small trips to different locations and had some hills and small mountains, but we hadn't done anything as severe as what I did with your guys, during the bear season just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
that was extreme for me. I know it harkens back to my time in California and our mountains there, and I just realized how out of shape I got over time for that type of terrain. There's I'm in shape for my conditions, but I'm not in shape for yours. That was for sure.
Well, the thing, you kind of scared me. You, one of the questions you asked me before on your way up, you're like, do I need to pack a tent? Do I need to, how big of packs do we need? How many days are we going to be out at a time? And I'm like,
yeah.
Wait a second. What's he talking? Like, are we going to be out in the woods for days? I'm like, no, like we coming home at dark, like one way or the other, we are going to be back at dark.
See, that was my experience back in California. Cause when we did it, we didn't have a lot of the equipment that you're using today.
Mm-hmm.
The modern GPS equipment. We had the radio collars and the big antennas that you held up, and half the time they didn't work worth the damn.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to use your intuition on where the dogs are going. And, we could be out there for 2 days straight, it's just running around chasing those dogs because they would go for miles and miles and miles.
Yeah. Like I said, when you said that, I'm like, gosh, this dude, he's going to think I'm a wimp. Like he's not going to be enthused with what we're doing. We're kind of taking the easy way out.
No, that's not the case. You guys it was a great lesson for me. And the system that you guys used for your hunting was different than what we did, for sure, back in the day, but it's still really, really exciting. And the teamwork that went involved with it was absolutely crucial. It's not just the dogs, but the hunters play a really key role, and the communication between, the different guys that are out there. Without that communication, without the right location, without the good dogs, I mean, you just take one of those cogs out of the wheel and you're going to have a meltdown on your hunt. So I was pretty impressed by how you guys just put everything together. And I mean, how many bears did we tree in 3 days? 4, 5? 4, right?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
4 in 3 days. That's significant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to say a lot of luck goes with that. I mean, the food was plentiful this fall, and you hit the first week, and it was. And the weather, I mean, like I said, we want to talk about that too, but the weather helped us for the most part. But yeah, I mean, we were lucky, and we got lucky, and we do. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You surround yourself with good people, and good things happen. And I'm blessed to be a part of a group that is selfless. Nobody cares who's doing what. We're all there to help each other and do what needs to be done. We have a good time doing it, and I hope you've seen that.
Oh yeah,
it's a little stressful sometimes, but yeah.
I've never had an experience quite like that because, like I said, we would, when we hunted, and I didn't have a lot of experience outside, the Sierras, the Sierra Mountains in California, and with a few hunters, we would go out with, maybe one pack of dogs and 2 hunters. That was how we did it.
Mm-hmm.
And so to work with the system that you had with multiple packs and multiple hunters was really cool. I mean, it took obviously a lot of integration and a lot of talking and a lot of planning and communication. I was so impressed with how that worked.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys have to have knowledge of the terrain. I mean, that's half the battle. And I think, honestly, Heath, that's where you come in because you know that place like the back of your hand. I mean, you could explain stuff to guys, what they needed to look for by radio and, just from memory, or they could describe where they were at and you knew exactly where they were without even having to look at the GPS. That was amazing.
Yeah. And that's from spending the last, 28 years of my life. And I don't hunt the same place all the time, but
yeah.
But that's from spending years and years and years in there by myself, wandering around and lessons learned. I mean, you go across one ridge and you should have went around and hit the hollow and went up another side. And it's stuff like that has helped me through the years. And I try to emphasize to some of our younger guys that, the older guys in our group, they've got a lot of knowledge because they've been doing it, and you're getting the short abbreviated version because they're pointing you in the right direction and they're telling you, hey, you need to go check over here and you need to come down this way and check this rock outcrop, and that way you're not walking the whole valley and wasting your day. It's invaluable for the knowledge that our group has, and and like I said, it's kind of my backyard. I've grew up in that area, and we didn't. In fact, where you stayed, where your cabin was, that's like I said, we didn't even hunt there, and like I said, that's the same thing. I mean, we hunted it for years and years and years, and so
do something a little different.
Yeah, we like to move around, and like I said, a lot of times. Food plays a big part in that. Where the food's at, what mountain range you need to go on, whether you need to hunt high or whether you need to hunt low. And, we do a lot of scouting. We run August and September, and that's kind of that's when we gather our information. Like, okay, how many bears in this area? What kind of bear are we seeing? Are we seeing more sows and cubs? Are we seeing, some mature boars so we do a lot of that in our training season. That's we're taking notes and seeing what's going on, so that helps.
Well, and that preparation is so important. I mean, it goes into any type of hunting, deer hunting, whatever you're doing. If you don't go out there and scout a little bit, you're going to pay the price for that once you get out there on your hunting time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but yeah, we were glad to have you up, and let's just real quick before we get into the meat and potatoes of what we want to talk about. Let's just recap the 3 day. You were up Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Like you said, we did end up catching or treeing. The last day was a kind of a rodeo.
Oh my God! Yeah, most exciting day.
They are, but it's so nerve wracking when you have dogs in there with a a little bit more ornery critter. So Monday or Thursday, what just tell me your experience. Tell me your perspective. What happened and kind of I mean, you're a dog man, Jeff. You know dogs regardless of what they are. What was you thinking? What was going through your mind?
And before we got out on the hunt or during the hunt?
No, yeah, all of it. What was I know we just kind of hit your expectation, kind of what your perception was through the California. But yeah, like we started the hunt, just kind of briefly walk through it. And yeah, just tell me what you were thinking. Like what was going through your mind when we were walking, and then when we did tree a bear. Just tell me what your thought process.
Well, getting there, when we arrived, the conditions were so significantly different than where we came from. in South Carolina. I mean, we just,
Mm-hmm.
we came from 75-degree weather. You could walk in shorts and flip flops if you wanted to. And so, I mean, the weather change, even though it wasn't harsh for you guys, it was a big change for us. My wife and my daughter, they've been deer hunting and their experience with that. Really looking forward to the bear hunt. But I think that when they got into the mountains and they got to see the extent of the wilderness that was in front of them, I think it was a little awe-inspiring for both of them. I don't think they knew what they were going to get into. I had an idea of the mountains because I've worked, the manhunting dogs in there before, but I don't think they did. Coming from where they used to live in the Philippines, and then of course where we live here, it was a huge change. So I think that it was awe-inspiring, and I think a little intimidating, right off the bat because of the wilderness aspect of it. I mean, when you're here in the low country, yeah, of course you have the wilderness, you have the swamps, but it doesn't hit you quite like the mountains there in Virginia do. So I think that was the first thing. I had no idea of what to expect. My only hunting with bear dogs was in California, and the way we did it, as I said before, was significantly different. We didn't use as many dogs. We didn't have many people. Our equipment was horrible, and we'd spent a long time out there. And basically, the way we started was quite a bit different too. We'd put the dog on the hood of the truck, slowly cruise the back roads until they got a strike, and then we'd put them out. Mm-hmm. And I know you guys do that sometimes too, but I think this is where your the teamwork really came in to play, and that's what I wasn't really ready for. I thought it was really great because, I mean, you had this, the mountainside already patterned out. You kind of had an idea where everybody was going to go. You had an idea how to put the dogs in. And I think that game plan is what made the 3 days successful. And more importantly, I mean, we treated the first bear on the first run, what was it, within an hour of getting out of the truck?
Yeah, probably.
An hour.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even less than that. I mean, we all started hitting our draws and heading downhill. And the next thing you know, dogs are going at it, and we're on it. So that was exciting. I mean, really, really for me. And I think that it was an eye opener in how the teamwork aspect of this could really play out. And so what was impressive was how everybody communicated, how they got along, and more importantly, how everybody kind of knew where everybody else was. So, all the time that you guys spent out there in the period before the hunt, I think really played out quite nicely. And then, of course, the quality of the dogs too. They stayed on the bear really, really well and treated them really quickly. Of course, the last day, that was a little different story, but that was a bear that didn't really want to treat. So, coming in, I didn't know what to expect. So my mind was wide open, and to do things differently than how I had experienced in the past was really quite a treat for me. Frankly, I kind of like your methodology better than what we used to use.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any way I could do now what I did in the Sierras, based on my experience just with you guys a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
There's no way I could handle those mountains the way I did back then. It just wasn't going to happen. So the way you guys did it is a much better way. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you talk about the old telemetry. I mean, when I started, way back in the in the early mid '90s, that's what we used, and I mean, we left dogs out a lot.
Yeah.
And had to go back the next day and round them up. And with the Garmin, the new GPS systems, that's not necessarily that's not something that happens often unless you have a collar that malfunctions, which we do have. The GPS, the cable that goes to the GPS signal is at the base of the antenna, and sometimes it'll work loose or it'll get frayed, and then we'll lose signal. So unless it's something like that, I mean, we don't have to leave dogs out like what you was accustomed to and what we used to do years ago.
Right. Yeah. And I that was the other thing is that the dogs, all seemed to be very responsive and they stayed together. They didn't seem to split off as much as I experienced in the past either.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was an amazing experience. And I just honestly wish we would have had a few more days up there. It was hard to leave.
Yeah. I mean, well, the invitation's open. So, and then we treed 2 bear that morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Friday, we were about done for the day. You and I had rode around quite a bit, and nothing was going. And then all of a sudden, Greg jumps one up, and a little confusion and cluster happened right there. And the next thing we know, we're 200 feet from a bear tree.
Well, the nice thing is it's right next to the side of the road.
Yeah.
that was far less hike than what we had the day before. So
yeah,
that helped quite a bit. And I think that was a lot of fun too, but it really, it emphasized the need to know your equipment, and I think that's one of my daughter had your 30-30 and she wasn't really familiar with the lever action very much. And I should have taken the time to sit down and have her, really shoot it and learn it before we got there. Because I think that, when we got under the tree, she has a rifle in her hand without a lot of knowledge about it. It made it a little bit difficult. And it just really emphasizes the fact that when you do any hunt, everybody has to know their equipment before they go out.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you have, your rifles, your pistols, your GPSs, everything that you have, you need to know it inside and out, because when the time comes to utilize it, you have that moment and then that's it.
Yeah.
Then it's gone. Yeah.
And that's kind of my fault too, because I just assumed because y'all had been deer hunting that she was familiar with the rifle, and I forget because the lever action is such a staple
for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, for Americans and, especially for hound hunting. I mean, just about everybody that hound hunts has an old lever, and it could be a 45-70 or a 44 or a 35 or a 30-30. And in my mind, she's deer hunting, she knows weapons, she's good. So I didn't give it a second thought until that day after after everything happened, and you're like, we need to shoot this. We need to. And I'm like,
I didn't give it a thought either, because I was thinking kind of the same as you, and I didn't even really think. I just went out and I teed the 30-30. That was the first rifle I ever had. It was a Marlin 30-30, and but Yana, I brought her up on a bolt action rifle, so she'd never shot one before, and I didn't even think about that. I just I would go out there running around with a rifle, and I wasn't I didn't think about it. So we learned a big lesson, and the good news is that she's pretty accurate with it. Once we did fire it,
she was,
and she'll be ready next time.
Yeah, and so we ended up taking that bear, but she didn't get a shot because it basically come down to the base of the tree, and we ended up killing it right at the base of the tree.
I think it almost landed on Wesley's head, didn't it?
Yes, it was awful close. Awful close.
Yeah. I don't think we had a choice at that moment, really.
Yeah. So that was the Friday, and then Saturday, you said that was the most exciting. So tell me y'all. I mean, tell me what all of y'all thought was going on. And like I said, I know I was yelling, "Get in the truck, let's go, let's move!" Like it was like a constant battle, like a chess match almost.
Well, the first part was there's a couple things that really struck me right off the bat. Is that it was, you just listen to the dogs and you could tell that this bear was not treeing, and it wasn't going to happen. And the other thing that really struck me was that every time we're listening to the dogs, and every location that we got to trying to get in front of them, you could tell by the sound, what the terrain features were that they were in, and then of course by looking at the GPS, and you knew exactly the rocks that they were in, the tree types that they were at, and I what was really cool was the simple fact that you could almost narrate what the hunt was doing, what the dogs were doing, what the bear were doing, just by simply looking at your map and watching the progress on the map. I mean, you knew exactly what was going on. And I think this went on we were on that bear for almost 3 hours, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
2.5.
Yeah, they got into it. It run a bunch of dogs off. It backed itself up underneath those cliffs, and it come out of there, and then it went back to the base of that cliff and back to. I mean, yeah. So it was. You're right. It was probably a good 2 to 3 hours. Yeah.
And the dogs stayed on top of it the whole time. And I guess we lost a couple because they, they had a little interaction with the bear and didn't feel so great about it afterwards. And I guess you can't blame them when they get laid open either.
No.
But this is what struck me the most, Heath, and this is what really, really drives home the sense of smell that bear have probably over just about any other land mammal. And every time we tried to get in front of that bear, every single time, he detected us from a distance and turned off.
Mm-hmm.
Every time. And that's all scent based.
Mm-hmm.
That's not sound. That's not ESP. That's the wind. He smelled us from a distance. And what was remarkable was some of those distances were 400, 500, 600 meters away through thick timber with terrain features in between. And he was, he's headed straight our way. We're ready to cut him off. I mean, we're right there. And then all of a sudden, several hundred yards away, he peels off and literally almost does a 180-degree run in a new direction. That happened to us six or seven times.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not coincidence. That's all scent. And dogs have some amazing capabilities with odor, as do deer and other animals. But I think they're kind of pale in comparison to the bear. Mm-hmm. I really do.
I would
especially watching that hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Especially watching that hunt.
Yeah,
that was some of the best air scenting I've ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
The bear is on a full tilt run, right? He's got a pack of dogs behind him, and a couple times there's at least 10 dogs on him a couple times. And from these distances, he was able to detect the blocking force and then change directions.
Yep.
And you just think about that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's it. And then that goes into your, as a hunter, you have to know that. And after the first couple times, we realized what was happening. And, we tried to change our tactics. And he was picking up both sets of people trying to pinch him, and then they actually pinched him up where it was more of an advantage for us because we was able to get in front of him several times.
Well, it's because he got into that thick swampland where he was having some trouble maneuvering.
Right.
That actually gave us a little bit of time on our hands, so we were able to get some bodies on the ground and moving. Yeah. And I think if he would have stayed in more of that open timber, that wouldn't have happened. It was just so thick, he was even slowed down.
Yeah, and you're right. If he would have stayed on that one ridge that he was on, I don't know that we'd have got close enough to him to ever get a shot. Like he would have got us on that.
Yeah, that was probably one of the most exciting hunts I've been on. I mean, it was just really, really amazing, and the girls had a fantastic time with it too. I mean, just I think it was 3 hours of nonstop heart thumping, adrenaline.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how often you have an adrenaline rush that lasts for 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad they enjoyed it. And you went home and you hooked Fury up with a handgun, didn't you?
Well, the thing is who was the gentleman that wanted to just carry the camera during the training season and then took a bite? Got bit by one of the bear, and then he carried.
That was Wesley's dad, Dow. The Journey on Houndsman XP has teamed up with One TDC. This dual-action support for oral health and mobility in our dogs. This unique supplement is so effective that it is recommended by top veterinarian experts worldwide to maintain and improve our dog's health in 4 different areas. Their oral health, hips, joints, and muscles, skin, coat, energy, and recovery. Guys, I've been using this product for the last 6 months, and it has been a game changer for me. If you're looking for something to help with the overall health of your dog, go to worksowell.com and give this product a try. It is highly recommended by Houndsman XP here on The Journey.
Yeah, it was right.
Yeah.
And so as soon as Flurry heard that story, she goes, you know what? I think I want a pistol. So she got a 357 for Christmas.
Yeah, nice. Nice. And I seen you've been posting. Y'all been out on the range and practicing too.
Well, it's our front yard.
Yeah.
Still. Yeah, I think it's going to be perfect when she goes out the next time. I think she didn't know what to expect. I mean, when you're hunting deer, there's not a lot of danger in that. And so I don't think she really had any concept that the tables can get turned on the hunter when you're hunting bear. And even though I've talked about it and we've discussed it, I don't think it really hit home until that last hunt on that last day, when we dealt with this overly savvy bear that was cold calculating and took out 3 dogs on the hunt, right? 3 dogs got kicked off on that. And yours got hurt the worst, right?
Yeah.
How's he doing, by the way, anyway?
Oh, he's back at it. I wished his courage would drop I want him to stay, but I don't need him getting beat up. I want you to stay. You got to have some stick, but I'd like to keep those teeth out of you.
Yeah, he just wants to get into the fight.
Yeah.
He's just all over it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that was exciting. And like I said, I'm glad that you guys enjoyed that. And hopefully next year we can even top that and have a better hunt and a better time. And we will. We got one of the bear claws I got from Wesley, and I'm having a custom necklace made for my daughter. So perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
From a silversmith. We'll show you that when we come up next time.
Oh, nice. So let's talk with your knowledge now. What are some things that you've seen during those 3 days with the hounds that relate to tracking and your experience in tracking? And one of the things, and I'll ask you about the humidity after that. I want to talk about humidity, but what are some things that you've seen that we can add as a learning tool or a lesson or something that we can use that would benefit us?
On the way the dogs are working?
Yeah. I mean, like maybe, like the first day it was a little wet out. It had rained the day before, I think. And it was crisp. I don't remember the temperature. I would say it was in the high 30s.
Mid-40s.
Mid-40s?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first track, there was no track. Spook just pulled up treed.
Yeah. Right off the bat, happened to get lucky and pop a bear.
Yeah. He jumped it right out of its bed and just fell treed, which is very, it's not uncommon, but it doesn't happen a lot. I mean, it'll happen here and there, but that's not something you see a lot of in bear hunting.
Yeah. Well, I think, from my perspective, if anything, when I'm watching, your dogs work free, I think the biggest thing it drives home to me is what a sea anchor we are to, our tracking dogs that we use.
Yes.
Because, and I think that a lot of police officers don't really conceptualize it very well. We talk about it all the time. One of the big things is the the endurance of the dogs while staying in odor. How long can they stay on that track? How long can they stay, on that hunt and not fall out? And the reason why I say that is that, we're working police dogs, patrol dogs in particular. And, I run into a lot of officers who'll say, gosh, my dog got burnt out after, just 300 yards. Right. And the thing is that if your dog got tired and burnt out after 300 yards, you probably weren't on anything, because when a dog is on odor and they're actively tracking and hunting and they're excited about it, they don't really get tired. I mean, they go a long, hard way for many miles and sometimes hours, like we did on that last day of the hunt. Mm-hmm. So that's probably one of the first things that I was thinking about. And then I think that would be a big lesson to, our handlers is that, when the dogs are on odor, they'll go for miles and you can't stop them really, unless of course they run into a brick wall or something like that. But, they've got all the longevity and the endurance in the world, but they have to be physically on something. Usually when you see a dog is actively tired and it looks like he's done after just a couple hundred yards, it usually means that he has no odor. The other thing that really kind of struck me quite a bit was, the air scent capabilities of our dogs. I talked about the bear and how he was able to, avoid all the ambushes that we had set up for him. The dogs are pretty damn good at that too. And their ability to air scent things from a distance is pretty amazing. The turn of a track, not just air scenting the bear itself, but they can detect the track sometimes from many yards away.
Yes.
They don't have to be physically on top of it to detect it. If the wind is right, they can sometimes detect the track itself from 100 yards away or more. I mean, really. So, and you really get to see that when you're watching the bear dogs work freely, because you're seeing all their body language, in the wild, without any interference from humans and a leash. So those are the things that struck me the most, really. And I use those quite a bit when I'm teaching my police dog handlers about the capabilities of the dogs and how they can detect things far more than sometimes what they think they can do.
Yeah, I've said this, and I said it before I ever said in your first class that we are not maximizing the capabilities of our dogs.
Yeah.
And I'm 100%. Us being that boat anchor, it's really it does the dog a disservice. And the better we get at it, the better our dog's going to be on the police side of it. And I think that's kind of what's helped me is being able to see my dogs work, free casting them and, rigging them or free casting them or however I'm hunting them and seeing what the dogs do. And then when I flip it over to the police side, I'm like, no, man, that dog can do so much more. That dog can do so much more.
And you just have to let them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And not think that, the problem with so many law enforcement guys is that the way they're trained and the way they're taught about tracking and scent is that you have to tell the dog where the track is and keep them there, which is something I really don't understand because we can't detect odors. So how do we really know? But it's how most guys operate. So, you always see them trying to anchor the dogs to where they think that track might be, where the dogs really know instinctively. And it's the better part of valor is to let them do their thing and we follow accordingly. Mm-hmm. But, one of the things that we talked about, I think while we were up there is the cold nosed dogs versus the hot nosed dogs. Mm-hmm. Remember that conversation? And,
I do.
How I think you were saying something to the effect that it seems like we're starting to get more of just those hot nosed dogs because the quantity of bear that are there versus when you first started, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
When you started, the bear were kind of few and far between versus now. What would you say the population has quadrupled or even more than that?
Well, I mean, it's definitely threefold because we caught as many bear in the 3 days that you were there as I caught in a whole year 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like that was just unheard of. If you caught a bear a week, and we talked. This is our conversation. If you caught a bear a week, you had some really good dogs. They just weren't here.
Yeah. Well, and I think that lack of quantity, and sometimes, in other words, the amount of deer per acre or acreage, or not deer but bear, would determine the how the dog actually the need for either that fresh track or that cold track.
Mm-hmm.
If you have plenty of bear there, the dogs are looking for that hot odor more than really anything else, because that's what's always hitting them in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before, I think, and now of course you would know this a little bit better, you probably had more cold-nosed dogs than you do now.
Yeah, and that was our conversation. We had some guys from the training group up that evening when we were having this conversation, and you asked me if I thought it was a training issue or a genetic issue. And my answer was, it's more of a training issue. My dogs don't have to, they don't have, they know that they may pass this track up, but if they go another mile or two in there, they're going to find one that's a lot fresher, and that they're going to be able to run and jump. And I've had some and I call them medium nosed dogs. In fact, my old female, Jimmy was a medium nosed dog. If she opened on a track, you could just about bet money that she was going to jump that bear. But the dogs that I had before her, like, they may trail all day and never jump a bear. So,
but still be an odor.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, I feel like it's a lot of. I mean, I'm sure genetics do play a part in it, but I feel like it's more of a training and a necessity based. It was my opinion.
Yeah, I agree too. I do, and I think that as long as you have the number of bear and the hunting possibilities that you have, then you're going to have what you have. And the dogs are going to be very selective because it's just easier for them. They're no dummies. They're not going to waste energy. There's that's the thing about dogs, is they never do anything the hard way. They're only going to do it the easy way. And if they have, one thing that's presented in front of them that's going to provide the reward that they're looking for, they're going to take that each and every time.
Yeah, one of the things I've taken from your playbook, and I when I'm teaching my tracking class, I still use your. This is you. You said in one of your classes that I'd sat through that when you talk about the evolution of the dog from being wild, the wolf or the coyote, and I always use the wolf because this is you. I'm telling your theology here that if you have a field and it's got elk in it 6 hours ago, 4 hours ago, and 2 hours ago, and that wolf pack rolls up in that field, they can smell all of them. But they're going to take the one that's 2 hours old because they know that their chance of survival is a high. The percentage is higher of them catching the 2 hour old track than the 6 hour old track.
Exactly.
And I think that plays. Go ahead. It
does. And not only is it an age factor, but it's beyond that. It is also I think that by odor alone, the dogs can determine infirmity, they can determine age, they can determine maturity. And I'll tell you how I experienced that and how I first had that epiphany. I was on a hog hunt up in the Sierra Mountains in California again, and I was sitting on a little ridgeline overlooking a valley that I was hoping the hogs were going to come through. And it was morning, the sun was just starting to come up, and I'm looking down in this really beautiful valley, beautiful grass, open, and a small herd of deer come in, several doe and then a bunch of fawns, right? So 5, 6 fawns, I think. And the doe position themselves in different places in the valley, and they're eating their grass or whatever it is that they're eating, but they're also paying attention to their surroundings really well. And they're not moving too much; they're just basically staying in one location. Whereas the fawns, on the other hand, they're bouncing around, they're playing, they're running all over the place. And then I watched them for about, 10 or 15 minutes, and then suddenly I think the lead doe detected something and they decided to take off. Well, about 10 minutes later, 2 coyote came into that same valley right on the back trail of the deer as they came in. And what was remarkable is I watched what the coyotes were tracking. They never once went to where the doe were positioned. They were tracking the fawns. They followed the fawn odor wherever the fawn were running with. And so not only can the dogs, detect and determine age and the value of one track versus the other based on age, I think they also do it based on the success rate they think they're going to have with the individual animal, based on age, infirmity, maturity, whatever it might be. I think they can detect these things. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but I think that they really do get an olfactory picture of the animal that they're detecting that goes beyond deer, rabbit, age of trail, whatever. I think it's far more complex than sometimes we give it credit for.
Yeah. And I had heard you say that before. And I mean, that stuff we just don't think about. We just don't, we just take for granted and just go on about our business.
Well, one of the things that's funny is that, when our world is wrapped up in our eyesight, we define everything by the way we see it. I think historically speaking, we as humans use scent far more historically than we do now, but eyesight primarily is what we use. And I don't know if you ever did it, but when I was a young kid in school, we did this thing in class where you stand up at the front of the class, you're told to turn around and look at a scene behind you, right? And then quickly turn away again and have to recount what it is that you saw, right? Did you ever do anything like that in school before?
We had to do that in the police academy.
I was at the police academy, okay?
Yeah.
Well, and what it is basically what you need to do is, in a flash, be able to remember what you saw and detail it the best you possibly can, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Dogs do that with their nose, with a single sniff. So we look at a picture out in front of us, and we describe that scene based on what we see. The dogs do that with their nose. Their eyes aren't anywhere near as capable of it. And so, when we were thinking about the dog's capabilities and how they pick out odor and how they use it, I think we need to start being a little bit more liberal in, the possibilities in what they can do. Their detection capabilities are just off the charts. And let's just go back to that bear being able to detect our ambush spots every time we set it up. I mean, that was some amazing stuff. The dogs have these same types of capabilities as well. They really, truly do. This is cold, hard calculation on their part.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, that's something I guess we don't never get into that deep, or we don't think about, but it's interesting to know that the dogs have the capability, and we know they smell our emotions. They know, they know everything about us. So yes. So another conversation we had that has piqued my, I want to go into it a little bit deeper, is we got to talking about humidity. And you asked me if I thought it helped or hurt our tracking, our dogs, our tracking. And I feel like that it hurt. Well, it depended on the time of year, the time of day, but I felt like humidity worked against us more than it did for us before our conversation. And I have thought about it a lot since we talked about it. So tell me what you were thinking and why that come up and what your thoughts are on the humidity part of it. Because in August, August and early September, I quit running my dogs by 10 o'clock because it gets so hot and the humidity's going up. So, yes, let's talk about that.
Well, from a humidity standpoint, I think humidity actually enables odor better. It's conducive to odor, and it's just simple biology. Scent as the dogs use it is based on organic molecules that are being broken down by bacteria growth. Okay, so the types of bacteria that are doing this are common throughout our world. Okay, and the requirements for this bacteria growth are moisture and oxygen, and then also temperature. They're all dependent on these three big issues. Now, of course, there are many other factors as well, but the three primary are going to be oxygen, temperature, and humidity. Good moisture, lots of oxygen, and a moderate temperature is conducive to good bacteria growth. As the temperature rises, that bacteria growth also rises. Okay. And what that means is you have a breakdown of biological matter that is very efficient and happening very, very quickly. And what that does is that produces a rapid off-gassing of odor or scent for the dogs to actually take. So in my view, and the way I feel about it, and just getting away from the science, just through observation, I've always found that when we have relatively high temperatures and high humidity, that the dogs actually can pick up better tracks, and it's easier for them, really, truly. Where we have problems, however, is the longevity of the dog from an endurance factor, because what the humidity does is it creates a situation where the dogs don't transfer heat quite as well. Correct. And it's not as efficient, so they overheat a lot faster. So sometimes our thought process is, well, maybe the scent's not quite as good, is really because the dogs are burning out a little bit quicker because of the humidity level. Yeah,
and like I said, when you asked me that, I was thinking, okay, I know that odor is going to cling to moisture. I get that. I know that, and how that moisture affects us. And I also understand and understood that, yes, when the dogs can't perspire, which is through panting, when the humidity's up, they gas 10 times faster. So after we had that conversation, I got to thinking, I'm like, well, maybe it's more so that the dogs cannot withstand the endurance to follow through because the humidity is affecting them worse than it is the scent.
That's exactly what it is. And so basically what you have to do, and we actually have a process for this with the military dogs, you have to build their scenting olfactory endurance capability through exercise in hot, humid conditions. Basically what you have to do is get them to be able to operate on a track with a higher core body temperature than they do normally. And that just takes repetition and a tiered training methodology to get them to that point.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I felt like I had a good grasp on it because, I had sat through your classes and talked to you. And then when you said that, I'm like, well, wait a second. I'm missing the second part of this, which is I know that it's gassing the dog. And that's why I'm pulling my dogs in early training season at 10 o'clock because I don't want them to have a heat stroke.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, the scent picture is good. It's actually better. The problem is it's just the dog's endurance level. And I guess for you guys in the training season, it's not that big of a deal because once you hit the actual hunting season, your humidity's gone and your temperature should drop back down, right?
For the most part, yes. Now, we had a couple days towards the end of season. It was the weekend. It was the week after Christmas. The cold front come through, and it was back up in the high 50s and 60s a couple days. Like,
really?
And I'm telling, I walked, I walked about 10, 11 miles one day, and I mean, I could see the difference in my dogs almost immediately. I mean, it was, by the time I got about a mile in, 2.5 miles in, like my dogs were not as spunky. They weren't they weren't hunting as wide. Like I could see a change in them, and it wasn't because they weren't rested. I had given 3 days off. You know, everything else was normal, but that drastic temperature change, I felt like played a huge part in their behavior.
It definitely affects their endurance. You know, it really, really, truly does. And if you're gonna work in those warmer conditions, it's really important that you build your dog's, you know, capacity for that before you actually get into your hunting season. For us, you know, we have to build the dog's ability to work here in our swamp environment in the middle of the summer before we actually throw them into it, because you can quickly get heat stroke in a 300-meter track if you're not really careful.
Mm-hmm. And the second day that I hunted in the high temperature, my dogs ended up catching a bear and running it for about 3 hours total by the time I got to them. And once it was over, like all of my dogs laid down, like they were done. Like they just
and they don't and they didn't do that at all when it was cold, did they?
No, not one time. So yeah, I mean, just kind of painting my picture back and going back through my head. Yeah, that temperature change made a huge difference.
Have you ever taken their core body temperature after a hunt before?
No, and I have. I mean, I have a thermometer in my medical kit, and that's something I may do that this training season just a couple times to see what they're running at.
And it wouldn't hurt. And compare that to the condition. You know, what's your humidity level? What's your temperature level? You know, and then compare that to the core body temperature. And I think you're going to be pretty surprised by what you see.
Yeah, and one of the things that'll play a factor in that is during the hotter months, I give my dogs glycerol to keep that temperature down just a notch or two. So that maybe I do an experiment. I don't give it to a dog and see if there's a huge difference in that.
Oh yeah, I'd be interested in hearing about that.
Yeah. Like I said, I bake my water and give them glycerol in the August and September. Well, pretty much all of September, even though it starts cooling down towards the end. But that's something I do for sure.
Is that common in the industry?
Using glycerol?
Yeah, for the different bear dogs and.
I don't know. One of our sponsors, Dogs Are Treed, Kevin and Nancy, they carry it. Like you can get I think it's an 8-ounce, 10-ounce bottle from them. It's already ready to go. You just gotta pour it in your water. So I don't know how much they're selling of it, but I have recommended it on the podcast before, and I use it. I do think it makes a difference, but at the same time, like I said, when it's hot, I'm pulling my dogs by 9, 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock's usually late for me. And it's kind of like, when we were down training with you in the heat, we got out 5 o'clock in the morning and, lunchtime was about it.
Yeah, we're done at lunch.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
So I've kind of taken that from you too. Like I said, I don't want to kill my dogs. Catching a bear in the heat's it's not the main priority. Like I'm more about conditioning, getting the dogs in shape. If they catch a bear, great. But I'm trying to build that strength and endurance up is what I'm kind of doing in that early month.
Absolutely. And one of the things I don't think a lot of people know that, dogs can have heat injuries and you don't even really know they have it. They have, just like humans, they can get heat exhaustion, not full-blown heat stroke. They can get heat exhaustion. You don't really catch it, but what you've actually done by getting to that point is reduce their tolerance for heat in the future. So it's really important to pay attention to that and to train your dogs up in the conditions that you're going to be working in. I'm really kind of interested in this glycerol thing. You got to send me a link for that, because that might be something that we could use here on our end as well.
Yes. Yeah. I'll do that. I'll definitely send that to you. So, Jeff, before we wrap this up, I mean, I know you're running an 8-week school now, and how many guys you got down in your class?
Well, I've actually only got 2 students in this one, but it's 8 weeks continuous classes. So, it's actually longer than that. I'm not going to be, because I've got, I've got 2 weeks with Montgomery County, and then I have Charleston. Right after that, I have Charleston County, and then Butte County, California. They're coming out to get a dog from us, and they'll be here for 2 weeks at the same time. And then I have the Marine Corps here for a week after that, MARSOC. And then I go to Sierra Vista, Arizona to teach a class there. And then as soon as that's done, Hayward, California, and then I come back and I have to go to Argentina to teach down there. And then I come back from Argentina and I'll be in Switzerland, Austria, Spain, and the UK.
You are booked up.
I'm booked up until May.
At this point. Well, you're going to have to leave a week in December unbooked.
Oh, it's already unbooked. We're ready.
All right. So before we wrap this up, is there anything else that you think that you can add, or just thoughts on the hounds and what you saw and anything like that?
Oh God, I just loved it so much. I can't. I think. Well, I hate to say it. It just seems like we're kind of at the end of an amazing time of human and dog history. I hate to say it, but I think that we're seeing a decline in what we're doing with the dogs. The bear hunting is, not only is it not as popular as it used to be, but it's not tolerated in so many places. And I think that we have to think about protecting the legacy that's there. And I don't think that anybody can be complacent nowadays. I mean, if you're a bear hunter, and you're into pack dogs, and it doesn't matter what you do, bear hunting, rabbit hunting, coon hunting, I don't care. You cannot be politically complacent. Mm-hmm. You have to understand that your livelihood and your passion is under attack from almost every single point. And if you want a future for your children or their children, you have to be active now. You have to understand that there are organizations and powers that are trying to shut all this down. And you only have to look in the other states where it's already happened to know that that's what's occurring. So, I mean, if I know we should be talking about scent and the actual dogs and work themselves, but right now I think the biggest thing that you have to be concerned about is your politics.
Yeah, they've been posting some stuff about some bills. It's deer hunting related. But yes, we've got to keep an eye on that, and we've always said that you've got to get involved, and you've got to shine your sport, whatever it is, in a good light, and be a representative of that sport and passion that you have. You and I had talked about that because. Yeah, so I had the girls with me, and you and I were talking that, I said, my girl's probably not going to see this through because of the attacks on hunting and everybody, they're trying to kill us, a death by 1,000 cuts, and that's what I said is they're trying to cut this out and cut that out and cut this out where you can't do it without actually banning the sport. So, yeah, everybody should get involved. With whatever it is they're passionate about.
Exactly, and if you're a hunter, you're a fisherman, if you want a future for yourself and your children, your grandchildren, you have to take a stand and you have to be a representative of what it is that you do. Mm-hmm. We're getting attacked at every single corner, and the we're seeing a shutdown across the board on so many different things. We live in a beautiful country with so many places and so many opportunities. I'd hate to see, our children or our grandchildren lose those possibilities in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jim, I don't know if our paths will cross this year. I don't know what conferences I'll be going to or I'll be allowed to go to because we are so short-handed. I mean, it's bad. But like I said, December, it's on your calendar. It's on my calendar. I will do my best to have the dogs ready and in shape. And we'll get the girls up, and we'll have a good time if we don't do anything else.
All right, brother. Well, I'm looking forward to it. They are too. And we'll stay in touch.
All right, Jeff. Thank you again for helping us teach, train, and learn.
Yeah, man. Take care. Talk to you later.
Mm-hmm.